Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing show for Canadians. My name is Erwin Cito, a full-time real estate professional since 2010, and I split time between being an investor-specific realtor and an eight-figure portfolio real estate investor. More important than the size of anyone's portfolio, it's all about financial peace, and my wife and I have it, and it's what I want for all of our investor clients and our listeners of this show. My strategy is value investing through renovation and maximizing rents through densification. Often that means basement suites. I have student rentals as well. And that's one of the strategies we teach our clients. That is called student rentals. And I know a lot of people have their ideas what a student rental is. I like to run my investments like a business. So would it surprise any of you that we sold a townhouse in Thorold, Ontario? Again, that's Thorold, Ontario. We sold a townhouse for $804,000 just last weekend. $804,000 for a townhouse. Where is Thorold, Ontario, you ask? It's actually very close to Brock University. And Brock Universities love living in newer construction homes, which is what my client's property was in that area. What makes these houses special is that they're only 8 years young. I worked directly with the builder on the design of these units so that the builder delivered to my client a 6 or 7 bedroom student rental house. What made it a student rental house is that we had noise canceling and fire retardant insulation in any of the shared walls and ceilings. The basement was finished with 2 bedrooms, featuring in each bedroom featured an egress window, which means it's a fire code compliant window for a person to climb out of in case of a fire. We omitted closet doors, which saved our clients money, and it's also one less thing to break. And in my experience, a lot of students don't like closet doors. They end up being used as coffee tables, so that's not something I want to be paying for. It's $700 per coffee table. Since the builder was delivering to our clients a finished product, our clients were able to finance everything, pretty much everything. So there's almost no renovation to come out of pocket for. Our clients were paying around $315,000 for these purpose-built student rental townhouses, which rented out for, at the time, $2,700 a month. Again, $2,700 a rent a month for a $315,000 purpose-built student rental townhouse. Fast forward today, market rent is closer to $4,900 per month. As we're in the middle of a housing crisis, it's even worse for students. And as mentioned, we listed and sold the house for. So it sold for over asking. It sold for $804,000 firm for what was about a 1,500 square foot townhouse. The return on appreciation alone, because it's easy math, again, bought for $315,000. Assume a 25% down payment. Sold for $804,000. Return is $490,000. As a return on investment, that's over 620% over 8 years, via a very simple, boring buy and hold real estate strategy. Never forget that making money is the objective. And also, before I continue on, in my experience, university students do not end up in the landlord-tenant board. So, in my opinion, a student, depending on where you operate, but a lot of student rentals, a lot of students as tenants are lower risk than regular tenants. Because again, in my experience, my clients don't end up in the landlord-tenant board, battling their tenant for like non-payment of rent or anything like that. So again, never forget that the objective is making money, not how many doors you have or what the current fad is, whatever it is right now, or how many Instagram followers one has. It's all about making money. And here my client did so successfully. So congratulations to them and the many others I have many other clients who continue to hold these properties. They're hoping that we get back to peak, which is over 900,000. So again, it's a nice, boring, no renovation property in a massive demand area for both buyers and tenants. Again, we're in a housing crisis, so tenants are scrambling still. That's why the rents are so high. They're scrambling to find property, and in turn, parents are looking for property to buy. Because I would do the same thing. I wouldn't have pay these atrocious rents. So my preference would be to buy, and there's many parents out there looking to buy. And again, in my experience, this is a winning investment. I think everyone would agree this is a winning investment. Good luck making these returns and any other fat investment out there. So if this meets your investment criteria, please let us know and reach out over email or social media, DM me, where everything basically gets back to us. But it is not all sunshine and rainbows. This week, I personally prepared an N4 and an N8 for my tenant, who missed April's rent and is persistently late. So those are the forms that one has to fill out respectively, and 4 and 8. Both are related to non-payment of rent. I'm getting involved as I'm operating with my personal assistant right now, who's no longer with us. She's okay. She's just not here at the company anymore. But I do also think that's important for managers to get into the details from time to time. And honestly, it gives me something to talk about. It gives me something to talk about, and it refreshes my memory on how to do these things. The tenant is very apologetic. I'm not too worried about not getting rent, as I have her mother as a guarantor, who has a great job and pays rent on time. I know, because the mom is also my tenant. The mom is also my tenant. And also, I've noticed since I got involved that my tenant's tone is in her communication with me is very different than how she communicated with her assistant. My tenant's memories seem to be very different. Her recollection of her payment history and history of being on time is very different than her tone's different with me. It is not fun having to threaten tenants with eviction, because that's essentially what these forms are for. That's what they do. Like, this is a notice for eviction for not paying rent, right? But if tenants are not held accountable to the terms of the lease, just no different than if I'm not held accountable to the terms of my lease, we run a really tight business, right? My handy people are basically on call to all my tenants should they ever need anything. Anyways, but yeah, if they're not held accountable and they don't pay rent on time, then this is what happens. Also, my tenant's rent is about for this specific tenant that's late. Her rent is about 30% under market, so she really should not be putting her cheap rent at risk either. I know some of you out there listening are asking, why don't we automate? Well, we used to, but when money wasn't in our account, there was a lot of NSF charges going on. So yeah, honestly, we're being a little too nice, but she is a single mom, so we're tolerating it for now, though it has been a few years. This also happens to be my daughter's house. For those who don't know, I've bought properties. Cherry and I have already bought properties. We've earmarked properties as our RESP for each kid. We call it our real estate savings plan. So one day it will be my daughter's job will become the landlord one day. So she'll have to take over this and take it off my plate. Speaking of my daughter, she recently came 3rd place in her competitive speaking class. My son, unfortunately, didn't win anything. Unfortunately, he's inherited my habit of mumbling. But yay, daughter! Cherry, myself, and our families are all shy people, especially growing up. We're all introverted. I think we're all pretty much all introverted as well. And I think everyone knows that public speaking and public presentation skills, verbal communication skills are all important. Hence, our kids are 3 years into public speaking classes. Only last year they got into competitive, and the results have been awesome. I'll see my kids holding conversations with adults at social events, either family or work-related events, and they're not shy like Cherry and I were at our age. Our experience has been a good one, so if your kids are feeling shy, I'd recommend public speaking as well. Speaking of public speaking, my team and I have presentations to give at the upcoming iWin meeting, online only meeting. We'll be giving the same awesome economic and market updates investors need to know, both east of the west and west of the GTA. And we're just about to confirm our guest speaker. It will either be a multifamily investor expert who has retired thanks to their portfolio. They have somewhere north of 300 doors, I believe. So this is someone who is extremely legit. And also, Brian does zero work, as in he's truly retired. It's not like some of some of these folks out there who are saying they're retired, but they have a full-time job. Or it's either going to be Brian, who again has hundreds of doors, very successful, makes lots of money, or we have a senior living / retirement home investor with over 20 years experience, and they have a fund as well. So it's going to be either senior care investing, someone who also has a fund, or someone who has a REIT, in the apartment building space. Whomever we have, it will be excellent, as these folks are serious veterans of the industry. They're a lot older than I am as well. So they've got lots of time and experience in the market. And as always, this will be an excellent iWin Real Estate meeting, and as that is always the standard here. As I mentioned, this will be an online event only. The meeting will take place at 7:30 on Tuesday, April 18th via Zoom. Hopefully everyone knows how to use Zoom. If live and in-person networking is more your thing, Saturday morning, April 22nd, we will be hosting the iWin Mastermind Tour. Again, that's called the iWin Mastermind Tour, which consists of, we're going to meet it for coffee. We're going to meet, this one's in Hamilton, so we'll be meeting at Hamilton's #1 ranked coffee shop. By the way, the croissants are to die for. Following once we're all gathered, we'll head out for a tour, both inside and outside of an income property or two. Sometimes they'll be owned by my clients, so these are actually real investment properties, followed by a mastermind lunch. Our last iWin Mastermind Tour sold out. The one we did in Oshawa just a few weeks ago is sold out in 4 days. So do not delay. The education and networking is excellent. If you haven't been on one of these tours before, again, we're meeting for coffee. We're going to be inside and doing tours inside and outside of income property and a mastermind lunch. So there's lots of opportunity to network with like-minded people. The cost is only $20 plus taxes and fees. All profits go to charity. So again, if you're not on my email list, then I don't know why. There's already over 10,000 hardworking Canadians on our email newsletter. And all you need to go do is go to this podcast's website, www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca, and put your name and email in on the right side, and then you'll start getting our email newsletters. You'll get informed when these new episodes come out, when we host events. Costs are nominal for almost all our events. Our iWin meeting that's online is free. So we're giving away a whole ton of quality education that actually makes people money. So get on my email newsletter. If you're already getting our emails, then you're just go check it out. You'll be informed when your first chance to register. So do not delay for the iWin Mastermind Tour, because again, the last one sold out in 4 days. So, and there was a lot of disappointment afterwards. So please do not delay. On to this week's show. This week we have Matthew Varga, who together with his wife Nicole have several six-figure ventures, so several six-figure businesses in different categories. They have a YouTube channel. It's called Health Nut Nutrition Inc., and it almost has 1 million subscribers, from which they generate ad revenue from YouTube. They also have show sponsors, and because they have an engaged audience and they have a brand, they're able to market their followers, their e-commerce store. So there's multiple revenue streams stemming from this successful YouTube channel. They have a growing portfolio of real estate investment properties. Some are buy and hold, and some of their buy and holds the Airbnb. And Matthew's doing what's called Airbnb Arbitrage, which means that he is the long-term tenant, so he's renting from other landlords. And then he furnishes that property and operates an Airbnb business in said rental property to make money, to pay the rent, and then Matthew gets to keep any remaining profits. Airbnb arbitrage can be a great way for newer investors to break into the market, but it's not without risk. What if you don't make enough? Then you're on the hook for the rent, right? Right. But Matthew is kind enough to detail his wish list for features in order to command the great rental rates before he would consider taking on any Airbnb arbitrage opportunity. Matthew also recently returned from Florida, as he now spends winters there in Florida to both avoid our cold winters and go looking for real estate opportunities. He also shares how he's able to do so, like logistically with visas and investments and whatnot. So Adam, our podcast producer, he's off camera, he's off mic, but he said that this is one of the best interviews we've ever done. It's really interesting. It's an interesting interview because a lot of people talk about doing YouTube and e-commerce stores and Airbnb arbitrages. Matthew actually does it and is quite successful. So for me, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Hence we're stuck at 17 listeners, but Matthew is legitimately young and successful. So I can't recommend enough that you have a listen and take notes. Please enjoy the show. What's keeping you busy these days?
So what's keeping us busy these days is probably like our newest project is like our Airbnb arbitrage business. So that's something that we started up just over a year ago. and we've built that up to about 15 properties now. That's a mixture of mostly Airbnb arbitrage, but there are some of our own units that were long-term that we've converted into Airbnbs. And then we also manage some people's Airbnbs for them. So we've had people reaching out and asking me to manage their properties for them because they've just been underperforming. But yeah, so we've been doing that for just over a year now, 15 properties. I think our gross revenue over the last year on that is about $350K. And probably by next year, we'll have that up to about $1 million, I think, as we add more properties and work with more investors. So that's sort of what we're looking to do. And like I said, that's like the Airbnb arbitrage model. So we can sort of talk about what that is and break that down. And then on top of that, we also run our YouTube channel, as we were just talking about a little bit earlier. So we have our main YouTube channel that's more focused on health, wellness, family stuff, since we had our daughter 2.5 years ago. So our content shifted a little bit to more family content. And that we're just going to hit 1 million subscribers this year. So that's a big milestone for us. We've been running that for a while. And then we have our e-commerce store that we've been running for the last couple of years. And we've been making some shifts there on what we're offering to people. We have our natural skincare line that we started a few years ago, but it's sort of dropped off a little bit, but we're looking to like really build that up this year and really put a lot more effort into that line of business. That sounds like a lot already, doesn't it? But yeah, we have all that going on, and then we have our long-term rentals that that we manage. We've been testing out some different businesses that I've been interested in. So like Turo, renting out cars on Turo. I think that can be very complementary to like the Airbnb business. And then recently this year I got seasons tickets for the Toronto Raptors. So I've been sort of trying that out too. And that's been actually like a good thing when it comes to like, I think I made about roughly like profit on the season's tickets this year, which is a whole other thing we can go into, but like roughly like $5K for the year in profit on like selling like the tickets with like a bit of markup to people. And
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. So that's like just something I got into this year. And I see you're wearing a Toronto Raptors shirt. So we might have to go to a game. I have to take you to a game then. So,
a funny thing about me is like, I just like to see the Raptors win. So we can go see Detroit Pistons. We can go see them play Orlando Magic. The tickets that nobody wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Because nothing bums me out when they suck when the Raptors lose.
Yeah, no, it's a very different vibe when you're there and like, they're winning compared to when they're losing. So yeah. I think this year their team's not the best. They started out really well, but they sort of dropped off this year. But like I think because we have the only team in Canada, like the demand for tickets is still really strong, and you can do a pretty healthy profit margin.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
All right. I thought introducing myself was difficult. This is pretty bad in terms of the size of the mouthful. Okay, let's start with our Airbnb arbitrage. What does that mean? So assume I'm grade 5. Explain to me what's Airbnb arbitrage.
Okay, so Airbnb arbitrage is where you rent a home from a traditional investor, landlord, so someone like yourself or any of the clients that you work with, and basically, sorry, my phone's going to go off a lot. Put that away. And you rent the home, you're paying normal market rents to them, and you're turning around, furnishing that property, and then you put it up on Airbnb. And the profit that you make is the difference between what you're paying in your expenses to that landlord, utilities and other costs, and what you're making on Airbnb. So this is something that we just started doing, like I said, just over a year ago. And I think it's just probably one of the best business models that I've seen, especially for like new investors or anyone who's just looking for something that has a really good cash on cash return and high cash flow margins. So we typically tend to work with real estate investors who own multiple properties, and they're looking for someone that they can rent their property to, have less headaches and long-term tenants. So that's how we actually got into it in the first place, is we had some friends of ours who were into Airbnb arbitrage that introduced us to the model. And because we own long-term properties ourselves and we have long-term tenants, we understand like the frustrations that can kind of come with it when you get people who don't pay rent on time, don't pay rent at all. As we know in Ontario, it can be difficult to evict people or recoup funds that you lose. So when we sort of heard about this business model, it made sense for us as like landlords to be like, oh, I could see why we want to rent to someone who's doing this model, because you have it professionally cleaned multiple times a month. We take care of any maintenance issues on site. So it was a great win-win to be able to offer this to investors and other landlords. And the profit margin that you can make while putting it up on Airbnb is actually like really good. If you want, I can give you an example of like our most recent project.
Please.
Our most recent project, we're renting a triplex from an investor in Windsor. It's 3 units. It's got 2 one-bedroom units and then a 3-bedroom unit. So we rent this whole property from the investor and we're paying him $4,000 a month, which is, good market rent. So he's happy because he's making what he would have gotten if it was a long-term tenant, 3 different long-term tenants renting all those properties. So he's making his cash flow that he's happy with. And then we furnish the property. I think our total cost to furnish.
Who pays for furnishing?
We pay for furnishing.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So we're
That's
paying
not cheap.
No. So to furnish this, and we tend to go more on the higher end, not higher end, but just like better quality furniture. Cause I just found a lot of other people who do this business or who set up Airbnbs, they try to do the cheapest route they can. And I've just found that like all IKEA, you attract certain clientele. You can't really charge premium rates. So we tend to go for a higher quality furniture, higher quality decorations and other things. So for us to furnish that property, we spent about $30,000, $30,000 to $35,000
for the whole triplex.
For the whole triplex, okay. That's 5 bedrooms, 2 different living rooms, so couches, rugs, all the stuff for the kitchen. So yeah, we spent about $35,000 to furnish the whole place. And with that landlord, we were able to negotiate 2 months free rent because he had a few things that he was working on. And in those 2 months, we were actually able to generate on Airbnb $11,000 of revenue, which went right into our pocket. So right off the bat, we made $11,000 profit in those first 2 months, which basically pays for, almost half the furniture, a third of the furniture. And now that we're paying our normal rent. So we're paying him $4,000 a month. Our total cost to run the property with utilities and internet is about $4,300, give or take. And for this month, March, we brought in $6,800 in revenue on Airbnb. So we made a profit of about $2,500 for this month. And it's one of the slower months. So I'm fairly confident that we're already starting to get bookings for May, June, July. I feel like we're probably going to bring in closer to like 9,000 in revenue in those summer months when people really start traveling more. So we'll probably make about $5,000 to $6,000 profit off that one property. So, you kind of do the math. You start to do a couple of these and you can really like 1 or 2 of these, a person could leave their 9-to-5 job if they wanted to, which is a big motivator for a lot of people these days.
Now, this just sounds fantastic. Now, I think I think we all know, I personally really like Airbnb, but it doesn't work on every property. So what are you looking for in a property that you would take on? Because I remember you actually you DM'd me asking me you're fact checking someone who pitched you, who said that the rents for this, and I'm like, no, they're not. That's
duplex in Hamilton. So normally what we look for in a property is we look for a property that's renovated, looks nice, newly done, white kitchen, granite countertops. We tend to only want to deal with like a higher end property that we can get good clientele in there. People are willing to spend more than just sort of the average nightly rate on Airbnb. We look for cities that have regulations that are favorable to us. Hamilton used to be pretty favorable, but it's from what I've...
It's pretty terrible now.
Now it's just, it's really changed. It's very anti-Airbnb. I mean, it's good if you own the property and you're just renting out your basement on Airbnb. I feel like you can still do that there, no problem. But
you're probably killing. You're probably loving the new bylaws.
Yeah, loving it. Because it's probably taken a lot of the corporate people who were doing it out of the picture, made them had to adjust to more midterm rentals. But we look for like newer properties, nicer properties. Duplexes are great because we can rent out the basement and the upstairs. Now we kind of focus more on Kitchener-Waterloo, Barrie, St. Catharines, Windsor. So, any investors who have properties in those areas, if they're looking to, talk more about this sort of model and see if it's a good fit, like feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about that. Really, we're looking for also properties that have, usually we like a nice backyard space that we can do up, because I find the high season for Airbnb in Canada is obviously the summer months. So we like to be able to offer like a nice outdoor setting, usually like a little fire pit, some Muskoka chairs, barbecue. I feel like that just helps us bring in more bookings than our competition.
Mm-hmm.
Really, any property that's in a city that has like good rules and regulations, that's up to date, looks good, has like a backyard that we can utilize and do something with, it has the potential to do well on Airbnb.
What about amenities? What amenities are important when you're looking for an Airbnb that will perform?
Like I said, I think just like a nice backyard space and like upgraded interior.
Oh, what about walkability? Does it be close to hospital, employment, restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, for some cities it is good. It depends on like who you're looking to target. So I find like those amenities make more sense if you're doing the midterm rental, so sort of anything over like the 28 days, because then you might be targeting more like students who are like, so for example, in the Windsor property, some of the people we have booking with us, they're students going to the University of Windsor, they're international. So then proximity is a useful thing. But I find if you're like, so for example, we have some Airbnbs in Barrie, like people aren't really concerned about the proximity to hospitals or grocery stores or anything like that. In the summer or in the winter time, people are asking like how close we are to the ski hills, because we're getting a lot more like, people who are booking for, ski vacations right now in Horseshoe Valley and Blue Mountains and that. So that I find but as long as you're within like 15 to 20 minutes of that, it hasn't really impacted our ability to get bookings. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would just say, unless you're looking to target more midterm rentals in a lot of the cities of Barrie, I find like some of those amenities aren't as important, because most people who are staying with us are driving up anyway, so they have the ability to drive to like grocery stores or anything that they need.
Right. So you need parking then as well, I guess.
Yeah, definitely need parking, unless you're doing it more in like the core of a city. But in general, yeah, if you have parking, I found that to be really important, because most of the people are driving up to stay with us. Yeah, that's definitely something. And then also usually for rules and regulations, they tend to have certain requirements for a number of parking spots and things like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I remember Adam and I were staying in an Airbnb in a duplex in Ottawa, and the ad said they had parking for two, but they did one of them was street parking, and street parking was only for 3 hours.
Oh yeah.
So we weren't happy campers, but it's funny because Airbnb can be it's not consistent, right? Because every operator is different. That was probably one of my not favorite experiences, but I still like staying in Airbnbs because there's always the common area, which you don't get in hotels.
And I think like for us, like we have a young daughter, and like staying in a hotel with kids, in my mind, is just, especially if they're a bit younger and maybe they still take naps or they go to bed early. It's, once you put them down, you're stuck in the room, right? So I find like Airbnbs are really good for families and people traveling, and like you said, having an outdoor space. Mm-hmm. You're right. Like sometimes the consistency of bookings isn't there, but we've been converting a lot of our long-term rentals into like Airbnbs as people move out. Mm-hmm. And even with lower occupancy during the winter months at some of our Barrie properties, I found that I'm still bringing in more than I would with a long-term tenant. And I have someone it's filled half the month. So there's less wear and tear and less this, and I'm still able to bring in the same or more as I would if I had rented it long-term. Mm-hmm. So like the benefits kind of outweigh the cost.
Right. I
find for us in a lot of those properties.
How are you managing though? Because Airbnb is much more transactional than a long-term relationship with a tenant, long-term tenant. Yeah. Because I have one property. I don't hear from the tenant. I hear from the tenant maybe twice a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I'm sure you hear from you get way more than that for an Airbnb customer.
Yeah. I found so a lot of things on Airbnb can be automated. So all your messaging can be automated. You can have everything sort of set up where you have your sequence of messages that get sent out to guests when they're checking in. So like they get after they book, they sort of get their welcome, thank you for booking with us message. Then they get their check-in message like an hour before their check-in time that kind of lists everything that they need to know about the property, their door code, Wi-Fi information. And then we usually have sort of a day after they check in, just sort of a touch point being like, okay, like everything going good, you need anything. And then we have our night before checkout, just sort of letting them know, oh, like you're checking out tomorrow. Don't forget, you have to check out by this time. Here's sort of, what we'd like to see. If you could, make sure your dishes are clean and this and that, sort of what we expect for our checkout. And then after they check out, we just have like a follow-up that just says, thank you for staying with us. If you have any feedback, let us know. Trying to get them to give us, like a 5-star rating or a good rating. So a lot of the stuff with Airbnb that you would think would be time consuming can really be automated now. And I found, to be honest, like even over the summertime when we had guests after guests after guests in our properties, like the amount of communication from people, as long as everything's really laid out and clear for them, I hardly hear from people. Because you think to yourself, when you go book an Airbnb, unless there's something that you can't find or you like something that's missing that you were expecting, like you don't reach out to the guests. You just want to go there, enjoy your vacation. And I have no interest in reaching out to people like the hosts on Airbnb to talk to them, right? It's like, as long as everything's there and set up for me and I understand like how to use everything, then I don't hear from anybody.
It's funny. I have a lot of Airbnb use experience. We just got back from one in Huntsville and there are labels everywhere and I loved it.
Yeah. Right. I think like you can really take a lot of the work out of Airbnb. You can have your like electronic locks. You can have electronic locks that sync up to like your Airbnb platform, so it'll change the codes and send those to the guest. There's really I would say probably like 80 or 90% of the work can be done up front and automated, so you don't have to worry about it ever again. Like there's a lot of work to like get everything set up and like understand the platform and how it works, and if there's any damage or anything like that, like having your systems in place to make sure that you get reimbursed for that and that you don't get sort of left covering the cost of that.
Has that ever happened? How many claims have you had make?
Not that many, but yeah, we have had some damage. Even just the other day, I had a guest who's staying at one of our properties and like they broke the couch leg, so it's like, oh, they're just like, oh, the leg broke. And I'm like, it's a brand new couch. It's like 2 months old. So I don't know if they were flopping around on it or who knows what they were doing. But in the end, it's like, okay, well, we have our process and our procedures that we follow. We have our photos that our cleaners take after they clean a property to just show that everything's in good condition. That way you can't have a guest try to say, oh, it was like that when I got here, because we have our photo evidence that shows everything's clean and everything's intact and in shape. And then, as long as we have that evidence, and then when the guest checks out, we take our follow-up photos after they check out that just shows and documents anything. So for that couch, we'll be able to, basically if we can't get a part to repair it, like we'll get it fully covered. Airbnb will pay for the couch for us to buy a brand new one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So your experience has been pretty good.
So far, yeah. As long as I think people that I've talked to have had bad experience or been unable to get reimbursed is because they didn't understand the system. They didn't have a process in place. I was talking to a guy the other day who didn't get reimbursed for stuff, but he didn't have any photos from his cleaner before the guest checked in after it was clean. So they were sending in photos from their listing. And Airbnb's like, well, these are like listing photos. It could have been taken months ago. Right. So as long as you sort of understand what Airbnb is looking for and you follow that to a T, there's really not much they can say, because like they offer that insurance and they offer to cover it for you. And if the guest isn't willing to pay for it, which a lot of times they won't, then Airbnb has to cover it.
So how's the insurance work? Like I imagine you have your own insurance. What insurance does the investor have?
So, like the owner of the home?
The real estate investor who's in an Airbnb arbitrage opportunity. Basically, you're the property manager. Just that your intention, the strategy is short-term rental on Airbnb platform. So what kind of insurance should the owner of the property have?
Usually the owner of the property would just have their standard house insurance that they would have. And then we have, Airbnb has its $2 million air cover policy that protects us. Some landlords like us to have our own like tenant insurance that we are happy to get so that we have that coverage. And then we also have our own, corporate business insurance that covers us under the Airbnb platform for our Airbnb business. So, you have really 4 different touch points of insurance. So it kind of provides ample coverage that people really don't need to worry about anything.
Right. Do some investors insist on having, like they will get their Airbnb insurance?
I've never met anyone that has asked to get that or has that. I mean, because really they're renting.
I had it on mine.
Oh, you had someone?
Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Oh, okay.
It was well over $200 a month.
Yeah, I mean, because most of the time, like when a landlord's renting to us, they're renting to us. It's just like a regular long-term tenant. Like we're signing the lease under our company name, and then we just have an addendum that allows us to do, Airbnb arbitrage to sublease it. So from what I've seen, no one's ever had to get any extra insurance because they're renting to us as a long-term tenant and we're the ones running the business. So we provide the insurance on our end to protect the property and damage and everything else. So
in my case, I was still the owner and I had a hired property manager. Right? Okay. So it wasn't an arbitrage. I wasn't renting to them. They were a service provider to me. But yeah, different
the property you owned that you just had a property manager running it for you, right?
Running an Airbnb business, taking. So I was paying him like 20% of my rents of the Airbnb rent, and he was dealing with it all basically.
Nice. How was the experience?
I've shared it before. My location was not the right location. And also it wasn't a duplex. It was a single family home. Just didn't make enough. It didn't work for us because again, for my clients, for example, I wasn't doing as nearly as well as my clients were, right? So for example, my clients are in like much more walkable areas, closer to like restaurants and like the convention center and stuff like that. They got much more walking traffic. So I was hoping for more performance like that. I didn't get it. So, I just sold it and bought another house instead. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I find like, even for a lot of investors now, I think like if you're in a city that allows Airbnb to be done, like I think it's a really viable option for, investors to try to look at that if it makes sense for them to do that instead of a long-term tenant. Like I said, we've converted and been converting our long-term rentals into like Airbnb just because the numbers, I find the numbers are so difficult on a long-term tenants to like really, and these are properties that we bought 5 years ago, and even then you're still like, oh, it just, the numbers just aren't that strong. So, I mean, I don't know, you're more involved in like that side of things now, but like, when I'm seeing like properties going for like $850,000 for a duplex and I'm looking at like the rents of, say, I don't know, 2,800 upstairs or whatever, and 1,500, 1,700 downstairs. I don't know how people are pulling this off and like generating cash flow. Like, I'm not sure what you're seeing on.
It's definitely tough for anyone getting in, anyone who's younger, anyone who doesn't have cash. Fortunately, we do have some clients who have cash, so they're all winning. It's really sad. It's really sad.
It is.
It is the rich are getting richer.
Yeah.
Like they have all the advantages. Like for example, they can do large cash down payments and not have to pay HELOC interest on that money for down payments and whatever renovations you're going to do, right? But the reality is, who needs the most help? Who needs to do the most for themselves financially? Yeah. It's not the rich people.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like when I see like my like sister-in-law and other people who are in their like early 20s, I just think, what? Like, what are you going to do? Like, I feel like at least for my daughter, I'm like, okay, well, you're going to benefit from decisions that we made, but people who don't have that luxury, it's tough. And that's why I do. And I think that's why you're seeing such an uprise in like Airbnb arbitrage and that sort of model on like social media and stuff, because it is a way for people who don't have the capital to get into like a real estate investment to profit and generate income from real estate. Like I was in my example of like the Windsor property, like I was saying, it's like we're making in this month like $2,500 a month in cash flow. Sure, there's more work involved than if it was a long-term,
It's a lot of money though.
but you're like, that would be 5 really good long-term properties if you were able to generate $500 a month cash flow off of like a long-term rental, and which is still like a bit of a stretch, I would say now. But I'm like, that's like 5 good properties, and if you're looking more at like a $200 to $300 a month sort of cash flow numbers, you're talking like, 8 properties that you would have to be able to generate the same amount of cash flows that we do off one. And we don't have to worry about, roof or, like HVAC or anything like that. Like I said, we take care of all maintenance on a property. If there's any damage done by like a guest, like we would obviously have that repaired, painted, freshened up, and the place is kept in like immaculate condition, which is like why landlords like to work with us, because their property is just kept. They would get their property back in the exact same condition that they gave it to us in, which a lot of times, as you know, when you have a long-term tenant, they leave.
Turnover, I know.
Their turnover costs. I mean, we had a great tenant. He moved out. He was with us for 5 years. And like, even though he was an amazing tenant, kept the place good, like treated like his own home, it's like, it still costs us like $1,500 to turn it over, to get it sort of just rent ready again with paint and other things, just to make it look new again, to put on the market. You're like, that chews up a lot of your cash flow over the bit. So I think that's like one of the benefits of why you're seeing, like, we get reached out all the time by investors who want us to do the same model, like rent their property. That's why I was asking you about Hamilton, because I was like, we hadn't been in that market yet. So just seeing what the rent rates were, but we're seeing a lot more investors wanting to go that route, just because of the peace of mind of not having to worry about professional tenants, damage, people leaving the place dirty. So it's definitely like a growing side of like the real estate industry, which I think is pretty exciting.
No, I think it's Airbnb, especially for a young person who wants to start in our Airbnb arbitrage. It's a wonderful way to learn the business if you don't have the capital.
Yeah.
Right. You'll learn a lot about home construction. You'll learn a lot about like working with tenants and managing people and managing real estate. And then when you go own a property, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Right.
And then like if you're able to generate that kind of cash flow, like it gives people the advantage of hopefully being able to like put that aside, save it up, and actually get into a property of their own. It's hard to generate that kind of cash flow or income per month of like with anything, right? Yeah, especially with the cost of living and stuff going up. So I'm definitely seeing a lot more people reaching out. I'm getting a lot of people asking if I do like coaching for them, and like people just trying to like get into the model, because it's, there's a bit of a learning curve, but I think like anyone can do it. Just once you learn the systems and that, it's definitely a really cool strategy. And I think like a great way for people to get into real estate, especially younger people or people who just, don't have the capital of their own to, buy something. So
Now, hang on, you were still doing a lot of this from Florida.
Yeah. So yeah. So
how did this work? You were not local for a while.
No, that's the good thing, is like you don't need to be local for it. So yeah, we were in Florida for over 6 months last year. We went down to Florida to really look at the real estate market down there, because as we were kind of talking about, like numbers have just been pinched a little bit up here. We found it to be difficult to justify spending the amount of money we'd have to spend on a down payment to get the cash flow that we can get off the properties we were seeing here that fit our sort of model of what we were looking for. So that's why we went down to Florida, and we were looking there. And I mean, it seems like a lot of Canadian investors that are pretty well known have been going down to the States to sort of take advantage of the opportunities down there. And especially now, like when we went down early last year, I found like it was the numbers were good, but like the bidding wars on properties, like last January and stuff, when we were in Florida and we were looking at stuff, it was like we were putting offers on properties in like Orlando, and like everything was going above multiple offers, like sight unseen. So we weren't able to actually like secure anything, because
Sorry, what months were these? What month were you in
That
Orlando
was
making offers?
so we were down there from
Because the correction already started.
you know what, like we were down there in November till May.
Right, so you're full on like rates
But
are
like
going up.
yeah. Well, this was last year. Sorry.
Yeah, rates have been going up since what, February?
No,
last
sorry.
year?
Like, but when I say last year, I forget we're in so that was like 2021 to 2022.
Okay,
Yeah,
before rates
sorry.
started going up. Okay.
Yeah, before rates started going up. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, so it was still like before rates were going up, and there was, you know, like obviously like huge demand for everything. So yeah, that was say January 2022.
You're probably lucky you didn't get anything accepted.
You know, like the only benefit would have been getting like the low interest rates on mortgages, but now we're seeing, now when I'm like looking at stuff, so we're actively looking at, you know, Airbnbs in the US. So we're looking at, you know, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, like all areas of Florida, Smoky Mountains, which is like in Tennessee, Nashville. So we're looking at Phoenix, like all these markets that have like really great opportunity for Airbnbs. And we're seeing now that because the markets have slowed down so much, like the thing that I like about the US market is the ability to do like more creative financing. And it's a bit more of a viable option here. Like here in Canada, you can do vendor take backs and other things. But I find like in the States, just because there's so much supply of stuff and such like a bigger market, doing like creative financing and seller financing now that the market slowed down is a lot easier.
Right,
like because people need to be creative to be able to unload these properties now with the interest rates of what they are.
Yeah, because I remember when I was in Fort Lauderdale before the pandemic, and back then it was standard for 30 days financing conditions.
Yeah.
Because I looked at a property on the water, and it had been on the market for like 7 months already. Right. That in today's market, especially like the last like 2 years ago, probably a year ago, probably disappeared in days.
It would have just, we were, like I said, we were
30 days for conditions. Yeah, right.
Yeah. You couldn't even,
never on Ontario.
so if you didn't have like a cash offer, it was hard to get something. Like we were finding that in Orlando, that was like, oh, we were interested in a lot of like Airbnbs around Disney. And we just found like things were going quick. Like it'd be up a couple of days and that's it. Whereas now we're looking and it's like, we're seeing things on the market for 6 months, you know, multiple months. You're seeing like price drops, dramatic price drops. Like we're seeing stuff in Fort Lauderdale that, you know, January last year were listed at like 1.5 and now we're seeing they're going for $899. So like huge price drops. I mean, granted, like I would say what they were trying to list it at last year was quite an inflated number, but you're starting to see a lot more opportunity and a lot more people willing to get creative and do different things. Seller financing is, you know, like we're talking to a lot of sellers there who are open to that.
Because it's almost unheard of in residential here.
It's hard. It's difficult, right? It seems like
seller financing.
You get a lot of gurus here who kind of tell you like, oh yeah, vendor take back in this, but I just don't think it's as well. It's just not something that's done so much here. I found, right?
Well, it's usually in like complicated properties where you see
Yeah.
like apartment buildings and large commercial.
Yeah, true.
Not in a single family home.
Yeah, they're in single family. Like you can just go on Zillow and you can like type in seller financing and sort of filter through like people who are saying open to create, because they've had it listed for like 6 months. And a lot of these people, they ran them as Airbnbs and they're not able to generate the revenue that they want anymore. So they're just trying to like unload these properties. But a lot of times like they bought them, you know, less than 2 years ago at say 550 and now they're selling them for 750. So I'm sure they're happy with the capital gains they've got. But yeah, so we're seeing a lot of opportunity in the States right now.
Our dollar's like 73 cents right now. So which is crazy because a year ago it was like 80 cents.
Yeah.
That does not seem to affect you. Like, were you earning, because I know you have your other businesses. I'm going to guess you were earning money in US dollars. Yeah.
So we are earning US dollars, which we just keep in US and we'll use that for our investing. But even when I look at the numbers, you know, when you're looking at like what it would convert to from like Canadian to US and based on the cash flow that you can get. So for example, like we're looking at a property in Orlando right now with a partner, and we'd be getting this for $700,000. It's 6 bedrooms, 5 bath, 3,500 square feet, pool in the back. And like a lot of times in Florida and other places, when you're buying Airbnbs, you buy them fully furnished. So we're getting like, you know, $40K worth of furniture already in there. Now our carrying costs on it with a 20% down, I think like the monthly carrying cost was about $5,000 when we included like HOA fees and property tax and, lawn care and pool maintenance. Is about $5,000.
My mortgage is more than that. Carry on.
Oh, is it? So like total, yeah. And they're like, I don't know. I mean, I don't live in a 3,500 square foot home right now.
don't
So I was
either.
like, oh, with the pool in the back. I'm like, so yeah. So your all-in annual carrying cost is about $60,000 US. And for that property, conservative estimate, air DNA, and doing our research on it, like we'd pull in over 100,000 US on that property. And that's like a conservative 65% occupancy. So we'd be able to generate almost like 40 grand conservatively in revenue, like in cash flow on that property, right? So when you kind of look at the numbers, you're like, well, that's what you'd be bringing in on that property there. So even with the conversion, if you do even convert it back, like some people, usually the better strategy is to keep it in US, keep it in like your S Corp or whatever, and then just use it to purchase more properties and sort of grow and expand that. But even if you were to convert it back, like I think like the numbers really work for themselves. And like I said, that's at like conservative estimates. So because of our other business, like the social media and stuff, like we utilize that business to help us fill our occupancy up. So we're marketing our Airbnb properties, to our audience, where it's like, especially like Disney, because we have a lot of families that follow us and follow our content. So like, being able to market these family friendly areas and properties to, 1 million people online allows us to have a much higher occupancy rate than, that 65%, because we're able to market to them, and we can even set up our own like direct booking site and like sort of take out the 3% middleman that we would have with Airbnb.
Only 3%?
Airbnb charges 3% to the host. So that's like our profit margin that cuts out. But like, it's also like, oh, now the person booking with you directly doesn't have to pay the Airbnb fees on Airbnb's end. So you're sort of saving, not only you're making a bit more profit on your end because, you're not paying Airbnb the 3%, but also the person booking with you directly is saving quite a chunk. I don't even know what Airbnb's fee is on the guest end, but usually seems pretty high whenever I'm looking at an Airbnb and I see Airbnb service fee. I'm like, oh, it's quite a lot. So
sorry, what was the asking? What was the asking on the Orlando host?
that was 700,000 US. Yeah. And it was like, and
They
like I
can
said,
build
it's
it for
been,
that?
sorry.
You can build it for that?
Yeah. I mean, and we're seeing those kind of numbers, like really in all over the US, like when we're like, well, not all over, but like all the areas that we're looking on that we know have a good amount of tourism and people coming in. So that Fort Lauderdale, same thing. We're looking at properties in Fort Lauderdale that are, 800,000, and same thing. We can generate 110,000 in revenue off Airbnb conservatively. So we're still able to generate anywhere between like 30 to 50,000 US cash flow on top of like what you're paying. And then you're getting mortgage pay down in that if you're not doing the arbitrage model, which is something that we're looking at down there as well, and getting opportunities presented to us for that. So I just find with the US, there's just like a lot of ways to make money.
Yeah.
And then I think like if you're creative with Airbnb, you can also make revenue on different things. So part of the reason why I got into Turo and doing like, sort of renting out like our Tesla and that is because I was like testing that business out to see, because I just saw an opportunity when we were in Florida is like, oh, like what our plan is to like, purchase these Airbnbs in Orlando and other cities. And then we're also going to have vehicles that we would offer to our guests to be able to like double dip. So, a lot of times when people are planning a vacation, they're booking their stay first and then they're getting their vehicle. So like when we booked our place in Orlando, it's like, oh, we book our house and then we look at like, okay, now we need to get a car to rent so we can get around. So what we're going to do is that we offer vehicles to our guests who are booking with us. It's like, hey, like you book with us, we have, van, SUV, whatever. We'll give you like, a great rate, cheaper than what they would get it for if they rented it, through a car rental agency. And it's sort of all built into their booking. So you can sort of take advantage of a lot of different revenue streams if you kind of get creative with it. Because we were renting, when we went down to Florida, we didn't drive down, we flew down. And then we were renting a vehicle. And I mean, like to rent a van for a month in Florida, it was costing us like, I don't know, $1,500 USD for like a month, and that's like booking it for a month, right? So
It was
yeah.
that much? Damn.
And that's just like and that's a month. Like you get a booking. Like if you were to rent that for like a week, you'd probably be paying more like $900 for the week. So
Damn.
yeah, so there's just like a lot of opportunity I find in the States, just because of the amount of tourism coming into some of those key areas where it's like, oh, people need a vehicle. You know, in Florida, usually like a lot of Airbnbs, like people will charge you pool heating. You know, oh, you want to heat your pool? It's $50 a day. Oh, you want to barbecue? $25 a day. You can rent that too. So you just see so many ways that people are making additional revenue on top of just their listing, that I just find it a lot of opportunity.
Right. Can you sell me Disney tickets for cheap?
That I don't think you can, but I'm
They
sure.
offer no discounts.
Yeah, I'm sure you could get creative and maybe like offer people, I don't know, gift baskets or something like that too. You know, like go on AliExpress or Alibaba and order a bunch of like Disney stuff for cheap and sort of give it to guests as like a welcome gift for free.
So I want the listener to understand, like, most people are not this vertically integrated. You have your own traffic.
Yeah,
you drive to your property.
But even if you didn't, I mean, like I said, like the numbers that I was stating were really more like what you see when you go to like AirDNA and you do your research and sort of see like what, you know, an AirDNA is just like a research tool you can use, and it's pulling historical data based on other people who also don't have a following. So those are numbers that you're seeing based on, you know, someone who doesn't have the ability to market to other people.
Because it's still taking data from Airbnb, VRBO, Home.
I don't know.
What's the other one? Is there, what's the third one? That's
Booking.com's a big one.
Okay.
But I don't know if they pull data from there. I know it's like majority of the data they pull would be from Airbnb. But you know, so you're getting a relatively accurate.
So sorry, just for the listener's benefit, the data is representing someone who's paying for traffic via Airbnb versus you can drive your own some of your own traffic as well.
Yeah, so when you're using AirDNA to like run your numbers, it like AirDNA is using historical data from, let's just say, Airbnb to be like, okay, well, we know similar properties to this that have 4 bedrooms, 2 baths over the last year. They've been able to generate, you know, $100,000 in revenue at an average rate of $400 a night, 65% occupancy. So
and they'll show you even the listings in your area, so you can
you can pay if you pay extra. I mean, you don't even need to pay extra. You can use like their rentalizer tool for free and get like at least that base knowledge. But then you're right, if you want to pay a little bit extra for like city specific data or state specific data, you can do that and get even more granular with the numbers.
I think I was paying like $40 a month. It's been a while.
Yeah, they can be pricey. I found like they really, I mean, I only use the free. I use the free option to give me like a base idea of like, okay, give me a broad general overview of like, okay, how much could I potentially generate? And then I dive deeper by just using Airbnb itself to sort of, you know, see what other bookings are there and other listings and competition to kind of get a better idea of what other calendars look like for the next few months. And you can really do a lot of this stuff for free. You don't need to necessarily pay for that extra information if you don't want to.
And how's your experience with traffic Airbnb wise? Because we're in the middle of a recession. It's funny because I often joke, like for example, where was I? I was skiing. Place was full.
Blue Mountain or something?
No, I was at Blue Mountain a few weeks ago.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, some recession we're having. The place was packed.
Yeah.
On a Monday.
Yeah.
Not a holiday.
Yeah.
All these people are dropping $100, $120 on the lift ticket.
Oh man. I mean, we were just in the Bahamas for a week and it was the same thing. I was like, it was full. Everyone's there, and it's like Bahamas isn't the cheapest place to travel to, and like you're just like, man, like I don't know. Yeah, it's not like you're going to these resorts or ski hills and it's just empty because no one's going out. So I'm like, there's a recession, obviously, which is impacting people, you know, unfortunately. But there's a huge sector of people who aren't impacted and like they don't care. Yeah, they want to have fun. Like, people want to live their life and enjoy themselves. And you know, we live in a world of instant gratification. So I think like the days of not doing things to hold off because it's like the best financial choice, I feel like maybe the generation coming up isn't as inclined to do that as like maybe our parents' generation, when they were a bit more willing to make those sacrifices. I feel like now people are more inclined to be like, well, I'll just put on a credit card and I'll figure it out later. Hence why credit card debt's like at an all-time high, I think, right now too, right?
Interesting. Not the people I roll with, but I will say the people that I roll with are generally much more well off than their parents were.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's that too. So one observation I made was, so I ski at the same place.
Okay.
At Christmas holidays and March break. This past March break was not nearly as busy. So I was talking to one of the staff at the ski place, and like, it's not that busy. She goes, yeah. My friend at the bank though says that people are just taking out money in all these different currencies, and that's where we're guessing people are going. So people took a bigger expense to go travel overseas than to go ski. So people are actually my small observation is people are spending even more money now than they were during Christmas holidays.
Yeah, I could believe it. I think like,
is that what you're seeing though? Like you must see some of this in your Airbnb information, like in terms of your bookings and whatnot. Like I imagine you were busy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I found like March has been a bit of a slower month, but I think it's just because of the weather's been, it's not like it's just all
your
snow.
stuff's Canadian though.
It's all Canadian based right now. Yeah. So
I bet the Florida bookings would have been crazy.
Yeah. Right now, like all the properties that I'm looking at and when doing my research, like most of them are 100% occupied for these months. You're still getting like the snowbirds going down to Florida and like they just have no interest in staying up here for the winter. So they're going down regardless every year. But even with our Barrie properties, like I'm always amazed at I'm always like blown away by the amount of money that people will pay for like an Airbnb in Barrie. I mean, like this is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow. We did like renovations. It looks great inside. We did like a little, nice like media room downstairs, 75-inch TV, a few games. And when I was initially setting this up, which would have been last summer, I was setting this up to sort of test it out to see how it would do. I was thinking like my max rates during peak season would be maybe like $350 a night type thing. And like we've had people, no word of a lie, pay us $800 a night for, I mean, like we allow up to like 10 people. So we allow bigger groups because we have, it's a 4-bedroom house, but like we've had people pay upwards of $800 a night to like stay at a house in Barrie. So like the numbers blow my mind sometimes where I'm like,
what was the occasion? Was there an event or
no, like
K-pop concert or
no, I mean if it's like there's Boots and Hearts, which is like a country festival there that we have had people pay pretty good rates, but these are like on a normal weekend. Like a normal weekend, people coming up because they're like, oh,
summer, Christmas, like what?
Over Christmas time we had families staying with us and they were paying pretty good rates, probably about like $600 a night, $700 a night. But even just like in February for like a 2-day weekend, people who booked, they had a group of 10 of them. It was like a group of friends going up there for like skiing. And because we charge additional rates for any guests over 5 people, it gives us like a nice extra boost. So they're paying, I think, $400 a night regularly, but then with the extra guests on top, $50 a pop each night. It ended up increasing our rate to about $800 a night. But when you kind of divide it by 10 people, it really ends up not being that much per person, I'm sure, when they broke it down. But I think just for us, like I said, we like to put in higher quality furniture. We like to do different things to just make our property stand out. Like I said, 75-inch TV instead of a 55, like a lot of people do. Create a nice media room, and we got a foosball table and a ping pong table. So it kind of gives people a little bit more to do that makes us stand out. So people are willing to pay a little bit extra for that.
Right. And then just naturally, you don't have to provide it, but you just provide the venue for the greater experience to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Because you don't get that when you're all in like 5 hotel rooms.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think like when you get larger groups, because we can do that, it's like when someone was to break it down, like if you were to book 5 hotel rooms, like how much is a hotel room a night? Probably like $200, $250. I don't even know, 300. So you probably get like a significantly higher cost if you were to stay in hotels and if you were to just book one place and then you can all stay there, cook your own food, have a community, have TVs in the living room to like lounge in. So it's a different experience.
Totally different. I much prefer it. I'm really enjoying it. Now we're running out of time, but I need to ask you about the YouTube business.
Okay.
Because you guys have been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
How long?
We've been doing YouTube. I think roughly it's probably been about 10 years. Now, so
what's it called so people can look it up?
Yeah, so our main channel is Health Nut Nutrition. That's the one that's run mostly by my wife, and then I have my own channel. It's a smaller one. I just started the other year, and it's just my name, Matthew Varga. Mine's more focused on finance, Airbnb, real estate investing, because that's obviously my focus. And then my wife's one is more on healthy food, cooking, healthy lifestyle, childcare stuff, like parenting stuff. So we've been doing that for 10 years. We originally started YouTube when we 10 years ago, we moved to Australia for 2 years. We went and lived there, backpacked, traveled Southeast Asia and Australia. And we were doing YouTube just to really mostly for our family, just sort of like documenting our travel. So because at the time there really wasn't vlogging or, people were making a living on YouTube. So that's how we kind of got into it originally. And then my wife sort of kept going with it, and she started doing more like the recipes and healthy lifestyle stuff. And then just over the years, it's just exploded and grown into what it is. Today like I said, we're hitting 1 million subscribers. I think we're somewhere like, I don't know, 100 million views or more. So we've really, created a community online, which is just like a really cool thing that we were able to, not only like make a living doing that, but we're also able to like provide value to people all over the world. And, it's pretty cool the world we live in now.
So I'm assuming you monetize that YouTube pays you for your content.
Yeah.
What kind of rates do they pay? I don't know if you want.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ask you what you get paid, but what kind of, just so, because I think most people have no idea what kind of that.
Yeah.
First, I don't think a lot of people know that YouTube will pay content providers.
Yeah, it's. I always find like one of the first questions, like when like you tell someone what you do, it's like, oh, what do you do? It's like, oh, like we do YouTube. People always ask like, will you get paid for that? It's like, yeah. And then the next question they ask, I think it's like the only job in the world where people can be like, well, how much do you make? That's what they ask. Like people always ask that. I find like you would never ask someone else that, like when you first meet them, but I think because of the nature of it. So like,
well, your lives are out there on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And like, because we've been doing it for so long and the size, I mean, like we get spotted all over. So it's like, it's become, a really cool thing. But so with YouTube, we have different ways that you can like make money from it. Obviously we have like AdSense revenue, which is the ads that get put up on our channel, like before you watch it. As I'm sure we've all, clicked the skip ads button many a time before, but so that's like,
I pay, so I don't even see them.
Oh, so you pay. Yeah. So we get ads through that. That brings in, 5 figures a month off of just ad revenue. And then like we work with brands. So we work with Amazon, Walmart, Target, Sobeys, like, big multinational companies on lots of different like campaigns and different things.
Right. So you're like brand ambassadors for large businesses.
Yeah. Usually it's sort of, they're paying to be like, hey, like we want to, either a new product came out or just market awareness, and they're paying us to be mentioned in a video. Yeah. One of our videos where we're talking about either the product.
So product review.
Yeah. Okay. Or sometimes it's like food where it's like, oh, we work with Sobeys and we create like a recipe using their food products. So they're getting market exposure that way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, that's also like that side of the business brings in multi-6 figures as well, working with these large companies. So definitely social media is a lot more lucrative than like, people would probably anticipate. Maybe not so much now. I think.
But you had no idea going into this.
Going into it, no. We were just doing it. At that point, like, we were making nothing. Like, I think Nicole was really doing it for a number of years, making no money at all. I think like the first thing we ever got was like a free straw one day. And that was like, we're going back like 6 years or something like that. But it was like, literally, it was like, here's a free glass straw. And we felt like, whoa, like we just got like someone gave us a free product just to like show it on our channel. It was mind blowing to us. And then, when we were able to monetize, I mean, back then there wasn't as much revenue being made from it. But I remember like when we made like our first dollar on like YouTube ads, and you're just like, wow. And you just started like to see the snowball just gradually over time being like, oh, and now, I mean, people make millions doing YouTube and doing all that stuff. So
there's a cool question. How does anyone price? So say I want you to, feature my water bottle on your show, just to do a product review, whatever. How does someone price that? Because I remember following Tim Ferriss and how he was trying to price his promoting anything on his stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not easy.
No,
it's all pretty. It's still a pretty new area.
Yeah.
Not completely new area anymore, but because it'd be based on like views and I don't know what else.
Yeah. So I think like a few years ago, I would say like companies and agencies were maybe a little less knowledgeable and stuff. So like they were paying more based on how much of a following you had. So if you had a million subscribers, they were paying more based on just the total viewership that you had and the size of your channel. But now they've gotten smarter and they've realized that like just because you have a big channel, like, you know, we know people with, you know, multi-millions on it, but like they have zero engagement. So now like companies are a bit more wise where it's like, it doesn't matter for, you know, like for eyeballs and whatnot, but it comes down to like, well, what's the engagement? Like, you know, like how much are people interacting with your content, leaving comments? You know, like normally when someone's paying you to show a product or show something, it's like usually there's a link involved to like go to their website and like check it out or go to their social and follow. So like now it's like those are things are tracked where it's like, okay, well, are people actually clicking on what you're recommending to them?
On the link to buy my water bottle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like, but if you're paying someone, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to show your product and then like no one's clicking on it or buying it, then it's just wasted money.
So it's much more sophisticated now.
Much more sophisticated. Now.
Even compared to what Tim Ferriss was talking about, because he was all based on how many listeners he had, how many downloads he had, and that's how he would price it.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's how it was done for the longest time. But I think now there's a lot better ways to track things. There's a lot better ways to really see like, well, what value are you getting?
Direct benefit.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's so normally it's like, the more engagement that you can get, the more you can prove that to clients, the more you have examples of like companies that you've worked with before, like the higher rate that you can charge based on that, right? And then it also depends on like, you know, there's upsells and there's bundles. Like, okay, you want YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, you know, like
you want it in my Airbnb. You want product placement in my Airbnb.
You know, like yeah, that's definitely or it's like, oh, like okay, like we can do it for this, but you know, like we've worked with mattress companies, let's say for example, and it's like, okay, well we could do it like this, but you know, maybe we can work out a deal where you give us like mattresses at cost, where we can buy them at cost, so we can supply our Airbnbs for a more affordable price. You know, so there's different ways that you can like work with companies, you know, and like sort of, you know, figure out different things. But yeah, you know, and then there's other ways to obviously make revenue from like social media, like, you know, creating your own products, selling your own stuff online, courses. Like I said before, we have like our own e-commerce store. So that's another avenue that we direct people to.
It's your store or is it on Amazon?
It's our own store. So we do have Amazon affiliates. So you can make money through like affiliate links like Amazon or, you know, other people's products. But then we also created our own store that at first we started selling mostly like wholesale items. So because we were doing a lot of food stuff, so we have like a published cookbook. So we had a lot of food products on our store. So it was like OXO, you know, OXO, like the company OXO, and like some of these other.
Nice. The big ergonomic handles.
Yeah. So we were selling a lot of these products, more like buying it from a wholesaler, you know, and then selling it online, typically with like a 50% margin. So we'd buy it for $10, sell it for $20. But then when you account for people packaging and the packaging supplies, we just found that the margins weren't as strong as we wanted. So then we started reaching out to companies through Alibaba and AliExpress and like getting our own products made through them. So like silicone baking mats, glass straws, like different things.
Like branded yogurt?
Yeah, we'd have it branded with our logo on it.
Bento. Sorry, I just need to pause you there because I think that's really, really key. Is I believe a successful e-commerce business has to have a strong brand.
I agree. Yeah, if you have a strong brand, then you can, like I said, if you're just selling, like when we're just selling other companies' products and brands, the margins were slim. Like we're maybe making 10% margin or something when you account for all the costs and everything else.
And someone can rip you off easily.
Yeah, someone could. And then like once we started shifting and like, oh, we focused on like, well, we have our own brand. Let's start to like make our own products with our own logo and our own like label on it that sort of fit our model of what we were looking for, like silicone baking mats, you know, eco-friendly bento boxes and different stuff. Well, now it's like we're buying them from, you know, China at say $3, you know, and we're able to sell it at $20, $25, right? So like your margins drastically increase, and like we're not charging more than the market is for that type of a product. But just because once we started going through getting rid of the wholesaler in the middle ground and kind of reaching out and actually getting our own stuff made, like the margins drastically increased, right?
Because I know a lot of people approach e-commerce from the product and did not develop a brand. So a lot of those people seem to have gotten out of the market. Like a lot of people who started in like the last 5 years, people who didn't get in early enough, and folks who do not have a brand.
Yeah.
They may have a logo and crap and stuff, but like they don't have an audience to show it to.
There's a big difference between like, having a logo and having like a brand and a presence, and where people are like, oh, I want to buy your stuff specifically because I trust you and I believe in what you're saying and I know you're creating good quality stuff. Yeah. But I think that's like over the last 5 years, there was a huge push for like FBA, like fulfillment by Amazon, and like all the gurus talking about how you can make, millions doing that. So there's a lot of people. I don't
see those ads anymore.
No, you don't really see it that much. I feel like now it's the Airbnb arbitrage model you're starting to see a lot more of, but like I do think that that's it's obviously very different than, fulfillment by Amazon. But that was like such a push for so long, drop shipping and that I think a lot of people thought that was their way to, make their millions. And like you said, by not having a brand and actually like a holistic ecosystem where people want to like actually purchase your stuff, it's like they all eventually faded away because once the market gets flooded with the same product at cheaper prices, eventually people get priced out.
Right. And I'd almost say like your brand is also as like you and your wife Nicole.
Yeah.
You are the brand.
We are the brand.
Yeah. You are it's I don't know if you want to call it influencer marketing. I think that's the label that is.
Yeah.
It's not a corporate brand.
No, exactly.
Versus
it's just
unfortunately which was a lot of people who are out of the business now. It was just, to me, it was a generic name that I'll never see again.
Yeah. I think because we do vlogs and more personal content too. So a lot of people who are watching us, like they feel like they're part of our family and feel like they're part of us. So when we are selective with what we offer or promote to people, very selective because you need to be. I feel like that's one way that like if you try to promote everyone's product just to make a buck, you can lose credibility really quick. So we're very selective about what we do, but when we do actually like something and promote it, people trust us because they've been watching us for so long and feel like they're part of our family. So it makes a big difference putting in that work ahead of time, doing like social media and building a brand and a following. You just have to be prepared to do a lot of work for no recognition for a long time. I think that's, the key is that just being consistent and doing it a lot that people don't like about like social media is that it does take a lot of work up front for
a ton of work.
Yeah. Like you've been doing it for so long, right? Like how long have you been doing it for? Like you guys are, and it takes a long time. It's like a slow, steady grind, but like, it pays off dividends because I'm sure like people you work with and your industry, like your company and stuff, it's like people probably like, even myself, like I followed you for a long time before I'd ever actually met you or went to any of your events, right? But it's like, oh, I have to watch someone for years. Same with like anyone else that I've ever gone to any of their events or done anything. It's like I tend to be that person who like watches someone for years or a long time before I'm willing to commit like to their stuff. So it's like the grind, it eventually pays off, but it's just for so long it doesn't seem like it is. Right?
I think that brings up 2 points. So I've been blogging since 2010.
Yeah.
And then the podcast started in 2016.
Oh wow, really? That long?
Yeah. I'm one of the OG.
Good for you, man.
I'm probably number 2 in the space in terms of when I started.
Your 12 listeners, is that 12 or?
Some people, I've had some people declaring they're the 18th listener. So
there you go.
We're growing. But I was always building an email database along the whole way. So my email database is over 10,000 now. So my podcast, for example, goes to that email database. So that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. Just like the newbie e-commerce people don't understand that you need a brand. But these newbie podcasters have to understand you have to have an existing audience. I got in with an existing audience. I already had a couple thousand on my email list at the time when I started the podcast, which is why it went well, and it's why it continues to do well. While I continue to see like all these new people podcasting, but it's going to be a tough slog.
Yeah.
Right. If you do not have an audience already to share it with. And then the other thing you mentioned like you follow people for a long time. I think that's wise because you need to understand people's track record before you'd ever invest in them.
Yeah.
Right. And I bring that up now because we see all these gurus who only did real estate in this boom period, never saw a correction before, and they've coached their clients and now their clients are failing, and it's really sad times.
Yeah, I've seen some people that I'm like, they they've, made millions selling, courses on Airbnb and other things. And like, I find like, yeah, people aren't willing to actually share like what they're actually doing or making. A lot of times it's just like the surface fluff. A lot of the gurus, right? They just show, like, I think we were talking about earlier, like it's all just good.
Before
all the good
recording,
stuff, all the good stuff, right?
Because usually they're selling something.
But I find like no one's willing to actually show you like their numbers and what they're doing. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I make, 7 figures on Airbnb, but then you don't actually see, show me like the number, show me actually what you're doing, show me like the background, show me like, there's a big difference between gross and net too. Like any business owner knows, like,
let me see the property.
Let me see the properties, right? Like I remember saw some people, they were on a different podcast of someone in the US that I like and I follow, and I heard these guys on it and they were talking about their Airbnb business. I was like, oh wow, like that's really cool, impressive. So I was like, oh, I want to see what their properties look like. It took forever to find these guys, but like if you know what you're doing on like the internet, you can find their listings. All their listings are like 3 stars, rated poorly. Clearly they're not actually running their business well. Meanwhile, they're selling, thousands of dollars courses to teach people how to run an Airbnb business.
Because they probably make more money there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, sure, they had their 10 properties or whatever that they were saying, but like I said, I looked at it and you're like, okay, 3 stars, no future bookings. Like, yet you're telling people like, I'm going to teach you how to make money on this. It's like, I think just people need to know, like, there's a lot of people out there like selling the snake oil, right? And like, you got to like dive deep into it. And I think if someone's not willing to like show you what they're actually doing, show some numbers, show some like physical proof.
Yeah, show me the property.
Show me like what you're doing. If you're not willing to do that, then like it's probably because you're full of BS. Yeah. Right. So I think like, or someone had just come out of the woodwork where it's like I think you've made that point before. It's someone who just got into real estate a year ago, or and then all of a sudden
5 years ago even.
Yeah, even 5 years ago. It's like, well, you haven't really been through the ups and downs and learned different stuff. So just be mindful. Be mindful.
I've heard stories about these groups that like they celebrate the deal, like a deal getting done, which is great. Celebrate getting a deal done. But often a lot of these deals were not any good.
Yeah.
As in like even the numbers going in weren't any good. Right? You don't celebrate that. Right? But to your point, like show me the numbers.
Yeah. And
when I saw the number, I see these folks trying to raise money online on social media and whatnot. I look at their deals and I'm like, this deal's terrible.
Yeah.
Right? But they're telling everyone it's great. And all these people who don't know how to vet a deal, they're like, oh, I like the person. Oh, they seem really fancy. They drive whatever XYZ car. It's really nice. They have nice sunglasses. They always have nice hair. They speak really well. I'm going to invest in them. Right? Yeah. Without knowing how to vet a deal. Right? And then it all falls apart.
Yeah. So I would just say to anyone who's like looking for like, and I'm a firm believer in coaching, and I think there's a lot of value in it. It's like, there's so many things that that's like one of my downfalls. Like, don't do enough coaching that I'm really trying to like get more into it. Like actually like hire coaches for things. I tend to always be at the mindset of like, oh, I just figure it out myself, which is like not the best way, but like I'm stubborn sometimes, but I'm just like, oh, whenever I do actually like have a coach, someone who's teaching me or helping me, it's like, I find like it makes a big difference. It's just like finding the good people. Cause now I think it's well known that you can make a lot of money coaching people. Because people are always willing to pay good money to like better their lives and do different things. So a lot of people take advantage of that. So I think just like said, doing that research and looking at the scenes, and like, if you have someone that you want to get coaching from, like ask to be like, show me what you're doing. Like, let's see some numbers here.
Yeah. See some numbers, see your properties.
Yeah, and if someone's not willing to show you, like, there's a reason. Because, like, why wouldn't it? So if I'm coaching someone about Airbnb and they're like, okay, well, like, let's see your properties. I'm like, sure. Like, here, take a look. Here's my calendar. Here's this. Like, here's the numbers we're making. Like, why want to hide that? If I am doing good, I should be proud of what I'm doing. And if I truly believe I can help people, like, achieve something and better their lives, and like, I should be showing them how I'm bettering my life by that way, to show them what they can do if they put the effort in too.
I know we're way over time, but I have to ask you about Florida.
Okay.
Sorry, and can we talk about your visa?
Sure, yeah.
What's your plan? Like, what's your plan to like split time living?
Yeah, so right now...
That's something I'm naturally curious about.
Yeah, so right now we're working with our lawyers to get an E1 visa. The typical visa people go for in the U.S. when they're like a real estate investor or someone who's Canadian trying to get into the U.S., they usually go for an E2. So a lot of the people I know who are applying for visas there. They're going for an E2, which is like an investor visa. And usually that one, you need to invest a certain amount of money into starting a company or buying a company in the US, show that you're going to be enhancing the economy there and putting money into the system. And that's the route that you can go to get like an E2 visa.
Wait, these guys are open to foreign buyers?
Yeah, like if you can show like, hey, like
This is the opposite of Canada.
yeah, if you can go in and be like, hey, I just bought this X business, it's generating this much, I'm going to hire these people, like I leased an office space. If you can show, hey, I'm putting money into the economy and I'm doing it, then like applying for a visa is, you know, like it takes a bit to get through it, but like most people can be approved for a visa because you're bettering the economy there, and that's what they're looking for. So we're going to do an E1 visa, which is a bit different. And it's just because we have an online store, so we already do trade with the U.S. So that one, we're doing basically it's sort of like a investor trading visa, but it's because we already have a relationship with selling to the U.S. So it allows us to get a visa without having to put like a big initial investment into the U.S. So like the E2, you usually have to like put like, you know, they usually say the number is like $100,000, sort of what they're looking for to show that you've invested in and you're, you know, doing things. With the visa that we have, just because of what we've been doing already, it allows us to not have to actually put any money up front. We're basically just saying, hey, we already do a lot of trade with you. We're already benefiting your economy. We just are looking to expand in the US and do more. So we need a visa to help us with that. Mm-hmm. So that's the route that we're going, just because we don't need to put that initial upfront cost. So it really works out for us. But our goal is to spend probably like more time in the US than Canada. Like I'm not a big fan of winters. My thought is I would always rather vacation somewhere cold for skiing and snowboarding than like vacation somewhere warm for a week. So that's sort of, you know, what we've been working towards. So our plan is to move down to Florida and start really growing our Airbnb business and our investing down there. So we've already been working with, you know, Canadian investors and US investors, looking at properties to really grow our U.S. presence down there. And just by getting a visa and being present in the U.S., it'll just open up more doors, better financing opportunities. If you're a Canadian trying to invest in the U.S., you typically have to put a larger down payment, no different than a foreign investor buying in Canada. You have to put a larger chunk down. So by us getting our visa there, it's going to allow us to work with our investors to have to put less money up front to buy properties. And I just, like I said, I just see a lot of opportunity in U.S. real estate. Like we were talking about the numbers down there. And I mean, those are just like solid cash flowing numbers on just sort of regular, you know, properties for Airbnb. So the numbers just really speak to us. So we're just looking to devote more time and energy down there. And, you know, our goal is to try to help Canadian investors invest in the U.S. just because there is a lot of opportunity there. But there's a hurdle of like learning how to invest in the US and what you need to do and how to set things up legally. And like I said, the financing stuff. And I think that scares a lot of Canadians away from investing in the US. Like a lot of people who reach out to me, it's usually that, like, I don't really know how to do anything down there, or like it's a different market. It just seems like everything's so different. So this just allows us to help people who want to invest in the US have a better opportunity of doing it. And like I said, I just think that the numbers speak for themselves there. So.
All right, man. You've been really generous with your time.
I've enjoyed it. This has been a great conversation. I feel like we haven't seen each other in so long. It's been a couple of years.
You've been away.
Yeah.
Any final words?
Any final words? Something that you feel like you need to have some like wise words of wisdom. I just think for people, it's just be open to looking at like some different opportunities. And I mean, like when I got started in real estate, it was the traditional long-term buy and hold, which I think is like, you know, was a great business model at the time. And like, I still think there's opportunity there for certain people who are looking for certain types of, you know, safe, easier investments. But I think there's just like so many different things that have opened up over the, like, since I started investing and probably since you started investing with like Airbnb Arbitrage.
We could cash flow with a single family home back when I started.
Yeah, exactly. Like back then it's like, oh, you could buy a property and be like, I'm making $500 a month off this, you know, get a couple of those and you could leave your 9 to 5 and, you know, like run real estate as like a full-time business, which I feel like you can't really do that now. But with some of these other options, like you do have that that ability. It's just being creative, getting outside of like the typical box that I think like where a lot of people are taught about with real estate. A lot of those take a little bit extra work, but I think like the work pays for itself. And I think also not being like, if you're not in an area or a city or province or state that the numbers make sense, like don't be afraid to invest like elsewhere in different areas where the numbers make a bit more sense. The work up front might be a little bit more, but if you can get into a market, the numbers really make sense for you and can help you achieve like your actual goals in life. And I think it's like worth it in the long run.
Fantastic. And I have a selfish question. What do you think about the market timing right now?
You would know more about like the Canadian market timing. I think U.S. market
talk to the US market
timing is fantastic right now, because I just think, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of creative options because people are sitting on properties for months and months at a time. You're seeing like prices drop, huge drops.
Because rates are going up.
Because rates are going up, and like
Just
a lot
went
of
up
people.
Yesterday,
Rates went up again. So people aren't able to unload their properties. There's a lot of supply on the market. So people are willing to be creative. So if you can come in and offer them, seller financing option that works, subject to, like I've been learning more and more about that down there, which is like another great creative option where you just take over their mortgage payments for them. So you can actually look to do something like that, where you might be able to take advantage of their low interest rates that they had from locking in a mortgage like 2 years ago. And people are really open to that sort of stuff. And I also find, even if you are looking at like the Airbnb arbitrage route, I find like I'm getting a lot of people in the US who are like really open to that, when they probably wouldn't have been a few years ago or last year, because they would have been like, well, I can just do it myself, or I can rent it long term. But now that there's so much supply sitting on the market, like people are willing to give up 2 months rent free, lower security deposits, like different things. Are willing to like give concessions where, like we know 2 years ago, it
was rip roaring.
Like they were in the driver's seat, and if you wanted to get something, you just had to like take what you were given and hope for the best. Whereas now I feel like people who are willing to who are actively looking to buy or do things, like you're in the driver's seat. You have a lot of opportunity to like negotiate and talk to people. And if they're not willing to be flexible or do what you want, then just move on. There's other properties.
Amazing. Matt, thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link is also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.